Welcome back. Okay, I'm still getting my bearings with this gardening thing, but hey, things are looking up. The plants haven't died yet, so I'm calling that a win. So today I want to talk about exes. Do you take them back? Do you want them back? Will you care if they come crying on their knees, begging for you to take them back? Will they just come back on their own without you manipulating situations? Will they regret not being with you? What else? Will they suddenly realize, wait a minute, I really messed that up? At the end of the day, I'm sure you've heard this before, but none of that really matters, especially if they're the ones who broke things off with you. You never want to give someone the satisfaction of simply stepping back into your life whenever they feel like it, especially when you feel betrayed. Man, and that betrayal, that is a hurt of all hurts. Sometimes there are just certain things you just can't unsee, unfeel, or unlearn. And once that trust is gone, there may be no coming back. Especially after they've been in a couple of relationships, there's no turning back from that. Because if there's something I've learned in my 56 years, 9 times out of 10, the person doing the breaking up has been thinking about it for weeks, months, and sometimes even years before they finally say it out loud. Breakups aren't easy for either person. The breaker upper or the break-e, person being broken up with. But in most cases, the person being broken up with is blindsided with a capital B. Now make that all caps, blindsided. Some of us have the wherewithal and the introspective in us to see things for what they are. We can see that this relationship may not be going well. It may not be, as good as it could be, or may have gone downhill in a handbasket. But you may be that person who thinks that they're with somebody who wants to keep trying. But you might not be with that person. So it's like having a best friend. Y'all talk all the time. You trust them. And then suddenly, nothing. They disappear. And then maybe you find out through someone else that this person you thought was your friend had actually been harboring jealousy or envy, had been fake the entire time, or had already moved on and started hanging out with somebody new or a whole new group of friends. That would hurt anybody. Now take those same feelings and multiply them by 10, because this is someone who you were romantically involved with. It hurts. I can't lie. Like, nobody can lie. That is pain. There's no pain like rejection. And it doesn't really matter how old you get. You eventually have to realize that life is about the journey, not the destination. I believe it's Ralph Waldo Emerson who is often credited with the phrase, life is a journey, not a destination. I've learned that there's a lot of truth in that. We can't become so focused on where we're going that we forget to appreciate where we are. But before you truly understand that, before it becomes part of your consciousness, a few eggs got to get broken. And no, I'm not talking about my garden again. I'm talking about life. Sometimes you have to experience pain before you understand its purpose. That's what it does. Experience, that is. That's what experience does. And ironically, experience tends to show up right when you need it most. We can't get so caught up in outcomes that we forget we can't control other people. You can't control anybody outside yourself. If a girl or guy breaks up with you, it's going to hurt. That is going to hurt. You're going to be sad. Of course. You're going to you might even be angry. You might spend a few nights staring at the ceiling asking yourself, what the hell just happened? That's normal. That's normal stuff. It's normal for us to try to think about what we did or what went wrong in a relationship, what we could have did to fix things. How we, if I would have just did this, or if I would have knew this, or if I would have read that. Eventually, you have to just be mature enough to let them go their own way. I've had my fair share of breakups, both doing the breaking up and both being the one getting broken up with. My last breakup was that. I was the one who got broken up with. And let me tell you, it's a humbling experience when somebody looks at you and says, I just can't do this anymore. Or, I think we should stop seeing each other. No matter how they say it, that shot hurts. Especially when you thought, this is my person. I've been waiting for somebody like this my entire life. And then suddenly, you have to let go of all those future plans, expectations, dreams, and scenarios you had created in your head for you and that person. That's one of the hardest parts. And that goes along with the betrayal. When I've been broken up with in the past, I've actually said something like this. Well, if anything changes down the line and you think you might want to try again, let me know. At the time, I thought that was some mature stuff, I thought that sounded incredibly mature. But looking back, what the F was I thinking? Because seriously, could you imagine? Could you really imagine starting that relationship all over again and going through those same situations? The same things that happened in that relationship is going to come back up again because no one did the work on themselves. No one probably thought they were the issue. A lot of people just don't think they have any problems, so they don't need to fix themselves. But anyway, that person left you for a reason. They left the relationship unilaterally. They decided to leave. And 9 times out of 10, by the time they come back, or if they come back, or even if you entertain them coming back, they've had other experiences, possibly other relationships. Well, I'm just going to say they've had other relationships. They've had other private parts in their hand or wherever else. And they may be a completely different person. And there's another thing you got to consider. Who they became during the breakup may actually be who they really are. People tend to change right before they break up with you. Or you may not see it, but they're changing, at the time when they're going to surprise you and tell you that they can't do it anymore. Before they are about to break up with you, they may become distant, cold, inconsistent, disrespectful, or completely unrecognizable compared to that person you first met. And if they do come back later, like I said, if you even entertain it, they may have just changed into something else entirely. Now, people can absolutely change and grow. People can grow for the better, they can change for the better, but there's a difference between healthy growth and having no real sense of who you are. Some people just don't know who they really are. People can be chameleon-like. People are mercurial, inconsistent, fickle, flippant, or unstable in their beliefs and behavior. Their core beliefs, positions, and principles can change depending on the situation or the person they're around or what they think will benefit them at that particular moment. And personally, I don't need that type of roller coaster in my life. I don't need a roller coaster at all. I'm already trying to keep these tomatoes alive. I don't need to be managing somebody's personality every Tuesday. But if someone no longer desires to be with you, just let them go. Give it time. I know it's cliche, but time heals all. Eventually you may realize that person just wasn't supposed to be in your life for the long haul anyway. And that could be one of the hardest realizations to accept. Not because you lost them, but because you have to accept that they simply weren't the right fit for you. And once you accept that, something beautiful happens. You're free to grow. You're free to have new experiences. You're free to meet new people. You're free to discover parts of yourself that may not ever surfaced while you were in that relationship. And eventually you may look around and realize my life is actually better without this person. Real true story, like my last breakup. After we broke up, I started having better finances. I did more things for myself. I learned stuff. I threw myself in different things to make money. So my financial situation increased 10 times, without this person. I don't even know if that would have happened. I wouldn't have started, the business I have now. And if you reach that point, here's the crazy part. In a weird way, you might actually owe that person a thank you. Honestly, I owe my ex a thank you for freeing me up so that I can meet my partner who I'm with today, who is amazing, by the way. If they never had left, you may never have discovered just how much your life could be without them. You may have never discovered how much better everything is without them. Sometimes rejection is really redirection. It's the universe's way of course correcting. Sometimes the breakup you thought was the end of your story was actually the beginning of a much better chapter. So no, don't sit around waiting for your ex to come back. Don't obsess over whether they regret leaving you. Don't wonder who they're with or what they're doing. Just keep them out of your consciousness and keep moving. I mean, that's better said than done, but you got to try. You just got to try not to think about them. You got to try to, put other things in your mind besides them. You got to, and if you keep moving, that'll happen. Because life is the journey, not the destination. And sometimes the person who walks out of your life is actually making room for the person, the experience, or the version of yourself that was waiting for you all along.